There are a lot of different ways to approach scales and modes for solos or composition, but it's easy to get stuck with the first approach you learned, or one that you found that was particularly effective for you at some point in the past. While these types of habits can be useful, they also have a tendency of creating unnecessary limitations. And so it's a good idea to mix things up from time to time, as it will give you more tools to use, as well as a more complete understanding of the subject. Today, I'd like to go over how various scales work over a single minor chord, but looking at it from the perspective of how each note of a scale harmonizes with the chord, which gives each combination its own distinct sound. Any note can work over any chord when put in the right context, but scales give us a structure that makes this type of harmony much easier to control. Let's take a look at a C minor triad on the piano. We have the C root note, then E flat for the minor third, and G for the fifth. The most confusing harmony is probably playing a major third over a minor chord, or vice versa. Simply put, that's because the third is what tells us if the chord is major or minor. That major or minor third is the most obvious harmony, and gives the chord emotional context that all the other harmonies are compared to. Similarly confusing harmonies to play with a major or minor triad would be a half step below or above the root note, such as a major seventh that's directly below the root note. Or a minor second. While in the example of playing the major seventh or the minor second in the same octave as the root, and without any other context, it's not clear which note is the root note, or rather, it's not clear which note we should be comparing the E flat and G to. In fact, if we removed the C entirely, we would get inversions of a G augmented and E flat 7 chord, respectively. So we can see that context is critical for how we interpret harmony. Let's take a quick look at each of those examples again. Only this time, we'll be playing each additional note one octave higher, which creates some separation between them and the triad, or more importantly, the root note. Now they sound considerably less dissonant. With the major seventh and what's now a minor ninth, it's pretty clear that we're playing a minor chord with a dissonant interval added to it. With the major third, however, it still causes confusion. This distinction may be a bit difficult for you to hear at first, but it becomes much clearer in a larger context. So we can see that avoiding creating ambiguity in the root note and third are really important. But when we increase the distance between the notes, such as playing them in a higher octave, it opens up more options to us. However, as you can hopefully tell from the demonstration, it's generally best to avoid playing both a major third and minor third of the same root note, regardless of the separation between them. Basically, any scale or mode that has a minor triad from the root note will work over a basic minor chord of the same root note. In this case, any scale that starts on C as the root note, has a minor third and a perfect fifth, will be compatible with a C minor chord. It can get a lot more interesting than that, but that's a good way to look at it for now. Each note from a scale harmonizes with the chord in a specific way, and that gives it a certain color or feeling. If you have two guitarists and one of them plays a C minor chord, while the other plays the seventh note of a C natural minor scale, together they're playing a C minor 7 chord. In a melody or improvisation, this can be thought of as something like a harmonic vocabulary. Different scales will give you a different vocabulary. Switching between scales or modes, or using the notes of other scales as accidentals, will increase the size of the overall available vocabulary. Obviously, this doesn't automatically sound good, but it opens up the possibilities for expressing more complex ideas and emotions, as well as creating different or more complex moods in a solo or improvisation. Putting it simply, different scales allow for different types of complex harmony to be created when that scale is played over a certain chord. Having some understanding of this is critical if you don't want to sound like the standard noodling guitarist, or if you want to learn to play the notes you hear in your head in real time. Let's take a look at some of these harmonies as they relate to specific scales played over a C minor chord. As we went over earlier, the C minor chord is based on the minor triad, and that's made up of a root, a minor third, and a perfect fifth. Since the minor triad is present in its entirety, playing any of those three notes over that chord would not add any new harmony to the chord. It gets interesting when we start to add notes that aren't present in the triad. From the perspective of using a scale to improvise over the chord, which harmonies we can create is based entirely on what scale we're using. Using C natural minor over a C minor chord allows for a major second, or a major ninth when going up an octave, a perfect fourth, or 11th when going up an octave, a minor sixth, or minor 13th when going up an octave, and a minor 7th. Let's listen to each of those notes together with the chord to see how they sound. Dorian is the same as natural minor, except with a raised sixth, or major sixth. Therefore, it changes the minor sixth, or 13th, found in natural minor, to a major sixth, or 13th. So to switch to Dorian, we only have to raise the sixth by a half step. Let's hear what the major sixth and 13th sound like over the C minor chord. The Phrygian mode is also almost the same as natural minor, with a difference of only one note. In this case, it has a flatted or minor second. So when we use Phrygian, it allows for us to get a minor second or minor ninth harmony when played over the root chord, just like the piano demonstration from the beginning of the video. A good place to start would be to practice improvising over a repeating C minor chord, using the three scales we just went over. Since the minor scale, or Aeolian mode, differs from the Dorian and Phrygian modes by only one note each, you can memorize all three pretty easily by just memorizing the minor scale and then memorizing the single note changes for Dorian and Phrygian. Again, if we start with the minor scale, we just raise the sixth by a half step to get Dorian. Starting back on the minor scale, we flat the second to get Phrygian. Let me give you a quick demonstration of how this could be used in improvisation over the C minor chord. You can do the same thing with any scale pattern that shares the minor triad. So we could also use harmonic and melodic minor, for example. However, you can experiment by changing any of the notes of a minor scale that aren't represented in the chord. Since we're sticking with a single chord and a scale with a matching root note, we only need to have the root, third, and fifth stay the same. You can change around the second, sixth, or seventh to either major or minor as you see fit, without running into any serious clashes. From this perspective, you can even sharp the fourth to be able to get the blue note used in the minor pentatonic blues scale. Obviously, in a full chord progression, this starts to get more complicated. It's not uncommon to change a scale based on a chord change when improvising over a progression, but that's a subject for another day. Hopefully, you can learn enough from playing around with this concept that it will start to open your mind to new possibilities when playing over a chord progression. Since the end goal of any exercise like this is really to eliminate your reliance on scales in general, ideally, you'd eventually be able to just find and play whatever note you hear in your head in real time based purely on how it sounds. This will make improvising over complex chord changes and even key changes no problem at all. Either way, this is an excellent exercise for getting a deeper understanding of a melody's relationship to the chords and how to have more control over your improvisation in general. The thing to remember is that every note harmonizes with every other note. It doesn't always sound good, but when you really develop an ear for harmony and you know what you're doing, you have unlimited possibilities to tap into. To illustrate this idea, let's listen to all the notes of a C Dorian mode played together as a chord. Yeah, that doesn't sound very good. So let's play those same notes again, but this time with some separation. Now that's quite a difference. It seems they just needed a little breathing room. When you start to think about how any note harmonizes with any other note, and how the context of a chord can be changed just through changing or adding harmony, you can start to find an entirely new way of looking at chords in general. And the same is true for scales and improvisation. Changing a bass note, for example, can change a chord. Harmonic context is everything for what we consider to be the root note and how we interpret the harmony itself. This idea can be exploited to no end when improvising over a single chord. To demonstrate, I'll improvise with the C Dorian mode over a C minor chord on the piano. The left hand is just playing notes from the C minor chord, while the right hand is going to town with different chords and harmonies in C Dorian. Remember, this is all improvised over a single chord, so everything the right hand is doing is being compared and related to the three notes of the C minor triad. If you'd like to play around with this idea, which I strongly recommend that you do, I've put together a backing track and the tabs for the scale and mode patterns used in this video. Follow the link in the description to join my mailing list. I'll send over the tabs and backing track, and then you can stay tuned for more tips like this each week. You can also get my free course, Secrets of a Sweep Arpeggio, through the same method. Just look for that link in the description as well. It's weird, I just improvised the line and then I scrolled down and then that was the line. Exactly word for word.